What's up, everybody? Welcome to another episode of STR Conversations. We are your hosts, Eric Miller and Jasper Rivers. What is up, Eric?
Yo, yo, yo. What's up, man?
got
Big day in short-term rentals, huh?
Man, we got a lot of stuff to talk about. Two major
Yeah.
acquisitions were announced today. We'll dive into that. But I want to hear first, how was your Airbnb experience over the weekend?
Yeah. Did we talk about this last week? What we were doing or no?
we
A little bit.
Exactly. Yeah, we told people that we're going to stay at Airbnbs, and so everyone's
Yeah.
like dying to hear how it was.
Yeah, sure. Yeah, dude, it was really cool. You know, this is the first time that we've ever done anything like this for the team, right? Where team culture wise, you know, outside of financial awards or rewards for crushing goals, like this is the first culture wise where we all invested in our team to do something cool, like a cool experience together. Yeah, and because everyone's around the world, we chose to do a unique Airbnb stay, which was awesome. So yeah, it was really cool, man. I took a solo weekend. I didn't want to leave San Diego. San Diego is so freaking beautiful, so I rented a yacht from 19, it wasn't a yacht, I mean it was a boat, she calls it a yacht, from 1982 I think it is, but man, freaking awesome. Like it's all wood, handmade, and it was just absolutely beautiful. And it was ran by this woman. She's been doing this for 12 years, a company called BoatBNB.com. I rented it on Airbnb, but she has 8 different boats in the marina in San Diego. So really, really cool. I stayed on that. It was a 2-bedroom, 2-bath yacht, sailboat. And literally the entire weekend, I was by myself. So I took a bunch of notebooks with me and a couple of books. And the entire weekend was just a bunch of reading and then solving the biggest questions that I had for our businesses right now. So it's cool, man. It was such a really awesome experience. I don't know if you've ever stayed on a boat before. That was my first time staying overnight on a boat, but staying down in the harbor and having a disconnect weekend like that was just so powerful. So yeah, we're gonna do more of that.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, just looking at that website, BoatBNB.com. Are these boats, are they can you take them out to cruise around, or are they really meant just to sleep on?
No, you can. I mean, you have to pay a extra fee to do that. I wasn't really interested in that side. I just wanted to kind of disconnect and do some thinking time and get some clarity, which I did on both of our businesses, and some personal stuff as well. So it was great, dude. And then because I was in downtown, I don't really spend too much time downtown San Diego, that I hit up a couple of my old friends. We set up a small mini mastermind. So on Friday at sunset in the harbor, we sat on the boat and we talked about business for a few hours. So that was cool. That was awesome. This is what I love about experiences, man, is like you can leverage cool experiences like that to connect with people, right? Mm-hmm. 2 guys I wanted to connect with, they run some really successful companies and they're always challenging to get in touch with. But I was like, hey, I rented this yacht. We're going to be chilling in the harbor. I'll have some food, have some drinks, come on by. We're going to talk about these topics. We're going to spend 3 hours going into a mastermind. And I was able to leverage that to answer some really powerful questions. And honestly, from that, it's going to have a major impact on our business. So leveraging the experience to connect with the people I wanted to connect with. That was like my biggest takeaway from this weekend.
Yeah. Yeah, it's interesting. I have a friend who has the same strategy. He's very successful. He rents like a $100,000 a month apartment in New York. And the only reason he rents it is to connect with super high level individuals. So he basically lets people sleep there. And I was there once, and he plays midget golf on the balcony. Like that's how big it is. It's
that's insane.
Pretty interesting.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's interesting. It's interesting how when you have a yacht, suddenly it's a lot easier to get people to come over.
Yeah, I think it's the experience, man. Like the experience of sitting in the Point Loma Harbor at sunset with two other successful people having cocktails, drinking cocktails and talking about business. Like that's such a unique experience. They're like, hell yeah, I want to do that. That's really cool. So
Yeah.
yeah, it was
Yeah,
cool,
for
man.
sure.
I really enjoyed it. Got to see a whole nother side of San Diego that I haven't seen in a while and got to live that boat life. So what about
Yeah.
you, man? What was your experience?
It was awesome, man. I drove about an hour, hour and a half out of Panama City, which is in Panama. It's funny. After we talked about this last week, I sent out an email and I shared the link, and I got 4 or 5 people responded and told me like, "Hey, you booked in the wrong country. You booked in Panama instead of in Panama City, Florida." And I was like, "Nah, that's where I live."
Yeah.
But amazing place in the mountains, so it's not as hot. Like it's really hot in Panama City, really hot and humid. So just being in the mountains, like it's a bit cooler, which was awesome. Secondly, we had a swimming pool and a hot tub with an amazing view. I could actually see the building where I live in Panama City. I could see it from the hot tub. And it's like over 20 miles.
Oh,
So it's really interesting how far you can see when it's clear skies and you're on a mountain. But yeah, it was incredible. And one thing that we always talk about that I recognized is just being away from everything just really helps take a higher level view on everything that we are doing, and provide some clarity. Right. So I had some pretty good takeaways. But when it comes to the actual experience, I think there's 2 takeaways for me. There's number one is we forget that there's really awesome places nearby where we live. Right. That's the first thing. Like, I had no idea that this place even existed. And just because we organized this team weekend, I looked on Airbnb a week before and I was like, okay, well, where can I go? Let's see if there's anything cool out here. I've never done that before, really. Just never came to my mind. Right. So
right.
that's number one. Is like, everybody who's out there listening to this, like go on Airbnb and just see what's within a 2-hour driving distance, and you might find something that you weren't even aware it existed. And then number two is it's just like how crazy related the average nightly rate or the nightly price that you can charge for your Airbnb is so tied to the wow factor versus like the square footage or it's so interesting that when you buy real estate, if you know the neighborhood and you know the square footage, you can give a pretty good estimate of how much it's going to cost.
Right.
But with Airbnb, it's just this was a very simple house, but just because of the jacuzzi and the view, I paid $300 a night, which is a really high price. There's other houses in the area that were the same size, the same interior design, the same everything, but they didn't have the hot tub with the view. Right. And those houses go for like a third of that price. Right. So you can triple your nightly rate by having that view in the jacuzzi, which kind of blew my mind.
Yeah, dude. The game is changing, right? And it's gonna be interesting talking about the next part of the podcast is like the acquisitions, what's happening in the industry right now. But that's the one thing I noticed when I was sitting on the boat. I'm like, man, this is such a freaking awesome experience. And I paid a lot of money per night to stay there for essentially a 1-bedroom compared to the downtown, 1-bedroom apartments or units that are out there. It was very comparable to like a full-on apartment. It was this tiny little boat that I'm staying on. So yeah, the experience is everything. And that's where I still think the industry is trending and leading. But also, we see that in the industry that, urban markets are not at a play right now. There's still a lot of money and excitement in urban markets. So yeah, experiences are obviously, I think, going to be really powerful moving forward for the industry for sure. But I think also it sounds like the urban markets are coming back, and that's supportive of the news that came out today as well.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, I think the whole industry is just kind of on fire right now. I mean, it's pretty crazy to see. We'll go through these, but there's 3 major acquisitions that happened in the last 3 days. So on March 11th, so that was on Friday, Transparent got acquired by a company called OTA Insight, which is a company that provides data intelligence for hospitality industry in general. And Transparent is very focused on short-term rentals.
Yeah, if you guys don't know Transparent, they're a short-term rental data company, right? So they have intelligence on different data and information about short-term rentals. So they're based in Spain, I believe.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, based in Madrid. So shout out to Pierre. He was pretty sure he was on the podcast at some point, but he's a co-founder, CEO of Transparent. They got started in 2016. Only like less than 6 years ago. So that's pretty impressive, right? To build this company and sell it in 6 years. Then today, or was it yesterday? Yesterday came the announcement that AirDNA, which is very similar to Transparent, right? They're both data intelligence providers in the short-term rental space, but AirDNA is probably more well-known. They've been around for a long time. They were kind of the leading.
They're the starter in the space for data, right?
Exactly. Yeah. And they got acquired by a private equity company.
Yeah. Dude, I'm really excited about this. They didn't give too much details on this yet. I'm sure it'll come out, but private equity company called Alpine acquired AirDNA. So I think, man, I've just been watching AirDNA throughout the years, and they're obviously the go-to data company in our space. And watching what Scott has done throughout the years just has been absolutely incredible. But I was watching that. I was waiting for something like this to happen for them, because they're in a unique position to really scale this to next level. And I feel like they got to a level in their business where they now need that extra level of support on scaling it to, scaling what their operations, their data, their team, the whole thing. So they didn't give too much details. I was just texting Scott. I'm like, bro, what's the down low? What numbers are we looking at here? How is this going to impact AirDNA? But dude, like, that's absolutely incredible to see. I'm curious to see how it impacts the industry. Like, to see that AirDNA is getting acquired by a bigger company like this, a private equity firm. I mean, it's, sky's the limit for them at this point.
Yeah, 100%. And, one of the takeaways for me is it's interesting to see that there's money now moving into the ecosystem, right, of short-term rentals versus the actual, companies that rent out the homes. So to see a private equity firm acquire a company within that's part of the ecosystem, I think is pretty interesting. That tells me that they must see a lot of opportunity in their space.
Yeah, of course, man. I don't know too much at Alpine. We're gonna have to do some research on them. But they are in the SaaS, the SaaS industry. And man, like I said, I'm just excited for AirDNA and the team over there, because I just think this is absolutely going to crush it for them. They've been doing such a great job throughout the years. Like, I don't think people recognize the difficulty of growing a SaaS company around data, right? Like, creating a company like AirDNA and all the data points. There was something in this article saying that they analyze over 10 million properties around the world, right? The amount of data points that come in on that, and managing that and then getting that to a place where consumers will be able to use the data and understand it in an easy way. That's a very difficult thing to do, for sure. So I'm excited to see how they're going to really take this to the next level. So congrats to the AirDNA team.
Yeah, huge congrats. Shout out to Scott Shefford. It's pretty amazing. Yeah, I totally agree. It's really difficult to build something like that. So major accomplishment. And then the other news that came out today actually is had you heard of this company, Placemakr? Well, they just rebranded. They were called WhyHotel before.
Yep.
But they raised 90 million of venture capital. And this company is really interesting. Because they're not really they try to combine like hotel with short
Mhm.
term and even longer term stays, which is a really interesting concept.
Yeah. Yeah. So, WhyHotel has been around for a bit. It's cool to see their company raising this much money, right? Because, post COVID, like, are we out of COVID? Are we like, I don't know. I don't know where we're at in the world today with this whole thing, but like when COVID hit, we watched a lot of these companies go out of business very, very quick, right? And from some of the biggest and most exciting companies that had a similar model, like Lyric, who raised a ton of money, partnered with directly with Airbnb, the whole thing went out of business with this model. And WhyHotel, they've been around for a bit, pretty similar to like what Sonder does. One thing that they do differently than Sonder is they focus on Sonder does this too, but they focus predominantly on new apartment buildings in urban areas, and they lease up units at 1 year terms, where Sonder kind of does multiple leases, right? Multiple years. But WhyHotel, yeah, I mean, they've been around for quite some time. They also raised back in the day 37 million, which was pretty interesting. So I'm assuming this is 90 million on top of what they currently have. And they rebranded under Placemaker. I'm not sure why. That's something that I would love to talk to the CEO about, like really understand why they made that move. I like I really like the brand WhyHotel. It really kind of shakes up the industry a bit, but their whole idea here is, it's a master lease company that's focused on creating temporary accommodations in these buildings. And they tend to move around quite a bit from what I understand. But another thing that I thought that was super, super interesting, and this is something that we got to learn a bit more about. So if anybody who's listening to this actually understands this and has done something like this, we'd love to hear from you on this. But including the $90 million in VC funds that they raised, or was it was private equity, correct?
Let me double check that. I think so. Yeah, venture equity funding. Yeah.
Okay, venture. Okay. They also got $750 million in programmatic equity. So I'm not familiar with this type of term, but essentially what this looks like is that it's almost like a line of credit for the company, but it's not debt. It's actually equity in the company. Yeah. Right. So, which is crazy, $750 million. And that's I'm assuming for them to take down real estate, to take down more buildings and to develop. I mean, 750 million is a lot of money, right? Yeah. So on top of their 90. So I'm assuming that's leading towards the development of their mixed use types of properties. Because WhyHotel or now Placemaker, they believe in a hybrid model. So having long-term and short-term rentals in buildings. So yeah, dude, super excited to see this, like to see AirDNA being acquired is freaking amazing for the industry. But then also seeing a company like WhyHotel or now Placemaker raising that much money, where their focus is master leasing in central urban markets. That's so refreshing to see that much money back into those types of markets.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And they pretty much cover the whole spectrum when it comes to short term versus long term, right? They even said they say Placemaker obtains apartment style inventory and then runs it as unfurnished and furnished apartments where people can stay anywhere between a few days or multiple years.
Yeah.
Which is pretty interesting. It kind of goes against like my intuition of like, focusing on one thing with the business and just being really good at something, and where they are like pretty much like doing and being very flexible and having different types of offers with those apartments.
Yeah, well, I mean, you look at the business model, right? Like the model is to take over the entire building and also getting, I'm sure they do this for multiple different reasons, like to get approvals to take over an entire building, but also to negotiate great deals with the developers, right? Because if you look at it and say like, hey, I'm going to take over 100 units, um I want to control the asset. I want to control the building. I want to control who's staying, how, like I've stayed in multiple buildings in, say like Miami and New Orleans. And I've stayed with some really big VC backed companies that have the model of moving short-term rentals into residential buildings, right? Where they'll take over 5, 6, 10 floors in this 40 floor, apartment building. And there was always a challenge with the residents that lived there, and then the short-term rental guests that were checking in. Very, very few buildings have really figured out how to manage the dynamic between residential and short-term rentals in the same urban building, right? Everyone's kind of using the same entrances, the same lobby, the same elevators. I remember in Miami, I went down there for a Tony Robbins event, and we were staying, I won't name the company, but pretty big company. They had quite a bit of leases down there. They're based down in Miami. And it was a big Tony event, and it was right across the street from this building that we were staying in. And my sister and I got into the elevator. And before we got in there, this was after a Tony event. So like, just imagine the energy that just came into the building of all the people that were at Tony Robbins, right? They're partying, they're screaming, they're laughing. Everyone's hanging out in the lobby. And we see this mother come walking by with 2 small children with her head down and just completely shocked by the whole thing. And she gets into like, we watched the whole situation, gets in the elevator with us. And luckily it was just us. And we started talking to her and found out that she lived in the building. She had just moved in, but she had no idea that short-term rentals were in the building. And it's been so disruptive for her that she's actually trying to break her lease to get out. She's like, I didn't know this. Everyone's using the same lobby. It's very disruptive, so on and so forth. So that's always been a challenge for that type of business model. So, and this is a pure guess. I haven't really looked into WhyHotel's model too deep, but I'm assuming the reason they take that on is to control the asset and also to make everyone happy around them, from the city to the developer, right? Because if they can take over 100 units in a 100-unit building, and 50 of those units are short-term rentals and the other are long-term, but they also have the option to do short-term rentals when they leave and use WhyHotel or now Placemakr to do that. I mean, their model is they're controlling the asset, just like what we're doing with Free Wild. Yeah, we're controlling the asset, and we control every aspect of all the units that are on our building. So regardless of what their model is, I mean, it's working for them. It's freaking amazing to see. Congrats to those guys. I'm going to be trying to connect with the CEO, Jason, on this. I just want to connect with him because that's truly, truly awesome to see. Yeah. But yeah, man, industry is back, baby. It's growing.
Yeah, for sure. No, and we also had the acquisition of Your Porter. That's a couple months ago. Sure. But that was, that fits well into this line. But I think also, you're mentioning combining long-term with short-term residents, long-term residents combining them with Airbnbs, right? I think there is also, if you know that that's the situation that you're getting into, there's also a lot of people that will enjoy that, I think, right? People that live, because flexibility is a big thing now when it comes to the way that people live. You remember when Chip Conley was in our mastermind, I think it was like 2 years ago, and when he said we're moving from a home away from home to a home instead of a home. Yeah. It was interesting that he said that 2 years ago, because it's like literally a couple months later that trend just kind of exploded. Yep. So I think one big takeaway from just seeing these hybrid models as well is that it really solidifies that the fact that it used to be that people live in a house and then they go on holiday for 1 week or 2 weeks a year, and that's it. So it's like home and vacation rental or hotel. That's pretty much it. And now, it's starting to merge. There's this, a gray area of a lot of things that are in between. It's like, it's like short-term rentals. It's like medium-term rentals now, where you can rent like 1 month, 2 month, 3 month. There's these
Yep.
co-living initiatives. Now, there's this, and there's a lot more, but it's just, the equilibrium is being shaken up. And I think just COVID has massively accelerated that trend.
Yeah, I agree, man. I agree. Yeah. I mean, Chip hit that nail on its head 2 years ago, because we're seeing a lot of shifts. And it's the same thing, with Samantha and I with our place. Like, we absolutely love our home and where we live. It's, it's freaking paradise here. But we still come across the landlord or the management company is a bit old school in the way that they run the property, right? And which is fine for someone who's looking for that. But now we're at the place now where it's like, hey, what happens when we go and we want to stay in work on one of the free wild locations for a month at a time? Our property just has to sit empty, right? And why don't you want short-term rentals? Well, all the same reasons why, all the same objections that landlords usually come back with are easily handled with the right technology and the right management, all of that. But this old school mindset of running a property and staying away from short-term rentals is really bumping heads with our generation, right? Like people now, they want to get out, they want to explore, they want to do all that, but they also want to have the comforts of home, and they want to have a home base in a way as well. So these models, there's another company, Aura Home. They are based, I believe they're based out of Miami. They had originally partnered with Airbnb on the building down in Miami as well, and now they're duplicating that. But that's the whole concept, right? Is hybrid models. It's like this entire building is approved for short-term rentals. You live here long-term, but if you want to go and travel, you totally can do that. You just have to use the management company to handle the day-to-day, right? It's like condo hotels. So yeah, so it's cool, man. But at the end of the day, it's freaking awesome. So everyone who's listening there, it's like, I know for us, like, inspired the hell out of us. As I'm reading this stuff, I'm texting you like, hey, we gotta visit Free Wild, and it's like, we got to look at our model. We got to look at how do we speed up this process, because there's a lot of cash, there's a lot of interest, even though that the markets are crazy, real estate is crazy, inflation is here. Like, there's, war happening in different parts of the world. Like, there's a lot of COVID is still around, like, there's a lot of craziness, but there's still a lot of opportunity in our industry to grow something unique and grow something, that the industry needs. So it's inspiring me to even work, smarter where we're at now on how to speed up the free wild process with fundraising.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, there's always going to be something going on in the world, right? There's always something, right? But the way I think about it is the short-term rental market is trending up, right? And that's gonna, in my opinion, going to continue for a long time. Around that trend, we'll have little ups and downs, and depending on what happens in the world. But one big lesson that I learned from when I was still a trader trading the financial markets: the trend is your friend, and that's important. So that's why I like.
What do you mean by that?
The trend is your friend. So if you are focused on something that's growing as a whole, then no matter the smaller things that happen the day to day, in the end of the day, you're in a good place, right? So this refers to trading, where it's like, hey, if a stock is trading up long term, then yes, it could go down a couple percent on one day, but at the end of the day, like, there's upwards momentum. So that's why they say the trend is your friend. And that's true for any industry. For if you're in an industry as a as a business owner, if the trend is in your favor, if the industry is growing, then you have more margin for error as a company, right? Versus if the industry is saturated and there's no growth.
Yeah. Are you so you're saying don't freak out. Don't freak out about what's happening. There's always going to be something happening in the market. Just keep focused on what you're doing. Stay steady. It's like the book Psychology of Money, right? Morgan Housel. He talks about, it's like and Tony Robbins talks about this as well, where it's like most people freak out about market dips and they pull all their money out, right? When a market drops or a currency drops, whatever it is, they pull all their cash out, freaking out, trying not to drop all the way to the bottom. With the intention of like, oh, okay, when it comes back up, I'm going to invest my money back in again. And they talk about like that reactive nature to the market is what really causes you to lose the biggest losses in your investment, versus people like Warren Buffett, who focuses on investing in companies for the long haul and just continues to compound his money over and over again. Right. It's like, regardless of what's happening in the market, just stay steady if you believe in the company and the investment.
Yeah. Yeah. 100%. I mean, there's another rule of thumb from the financial markets where they say, a lot of bigger investors, they say they're contrarian investors. And basically what that means is they look at like what the retail customers are doing. So the small, just the regular people that are investing in stocks, and they look at like how much they are selling. And if they are selling a lot, that's an indication for them that they should be buying. It's pretty interesting too. You've heard of the expression, buy when there's blood in the streets, I'm sure.
Yeah. That's definitely a Chicago saying for sure.
That's where I used to live.
Yeah. No, dude, I remember that, man. I remember when the market crashed in 2008 and, everybody was buying properties, kind of like what we're going through now. What we're going through with the market now, when everyone is buying, the most successful investors I know, real estate investors back in the day, when I was first getting into real estate, they were all selling, right? So when everybody was buying, they were selling, and they were just putting their cash in some investments that were easy for them to manage. When the market crashed and everyone started selling and doing short sales and foreclosures, they started buying up everything, right? When everyone was saying, like, the news and all the air quote investors or experts were saying, don't buy, real estate market's dead, they were buying up everything. They become some of the most wealthiest people I know. And that was my first introduction to real estate investing back in the day. So, and I'm seeing a lot of those trends now, but it's interesting because now we are focused on essentially creating a real estate development company where we're buying property and developing structures and running the front end, the operations behind it. And we have this huge opportunity to tap into the market, the industry, and raise some funds and grow an incredible company. But we're also facing a crazy, crazy market as well. So it's like, how do you make some strategic decisions to capitalize like these companies like Placemakr and raise some money and build an incredible team and grow a company in such a crazy real estate market, right? Yep. So that's where our hiring of like a solid real estate expert team who understands this stuff, who can, okay, well, we're going to pivot here versus there. We're going to structure it this way versus this way, is really going to support us on scaling that. So crazy times to be in the industry, man.
Yeah, I know. It's also interesting that when something new happens in the world, like whatever was happening before that, suddenly like you don't hear people talking about it anymore, right? It's almost like people can only what?
I said that? Like COVID.
What was that?
Just disappears.
It almost has, man. Like I mean, even here in my building. And by the way, something funny that I realized, like we were talking about the book a couple of weeks ago, the book, The Marriott Way, right?
Yeah. I'm almost finishing. Yeah, I'm finishing that up now.
So I haven't read it, but I wanted to buy it, but there's no Kindle version. There's no digital version. And it's like crazy shipping costs from the US to here. But the funny thing is, like, I actually live at a Marriott. I live at the W Marriott. which I never really realized. It sounds a bit silly, but everybody calls this the Trump, the building where I live. But
Okay.
Marriott took it over like a few years ago, but everybody still calls it the Trump. But I realized the other day I was walking into my building, and then suddenly I looked at the Marriott sign. I'm like, oh, I'm actually living at the Marriott.
Yeah.
So I don't know. I thought that was kind of funny, but I forgot why I started this now.
You were saying that it's funny how things disappear really quick,
Oh yeah,
like when people stop talking about it.
So, in the last week or so, suddenly, like, it seems like this whole code thing is no longer a thing. Like, there was no announcement or anything, but suddenly, like, you don't have to wear face masks anymore at the gym. You don't have to wear them in the buildings anymore. But there was no official announcement of like, all right, we're gonna, release these, these restrictions. It was just slowly, day by day, I was noticing more and more people were not wearing the face mask. And at some point, my girlfriend's like, I haven't been wearing them for like 2 weeks. Like, you don't have to wear it anymore. And I'm like, are you sure? Like, I haven't gotten any announcements. I don't see any signs. And they're like, she's like, yeah, it's just like people don't care anymore. Like, no one really cares anymore. And I think it's related to what's happening in Europe, right? Where there's now the focus has shifted to something else that's happening in the world.
Yeah. It's interesting, man. Yeah, I don't know how I feel about all this stuff. Obviously, that's a whole different type of podcast to go into, to talk about like how the psychology of humans shift so freaking easily, and how, media machines are able to shift focus and emotions really, really easily. But I've noticed that too. I've noticed that in, San Diego has kind of been an outlier for most of the US, where, we haven't, restaurants and gyms, and like every once in a while you walk into a place around here, a business around here that asks you to put on a mask and whatever else. You're like, okay, cool, that's fine. But for the majority, it's like we haven't really been living in that type of world for about a year here in San Diego, which is, it's been amazing. But where we were affected by it was in Ottawa, getting a lot of cancellations from people because of COVID, and mostly from LA, which is a whole nother atmosphere and lifestyle around COVID restrictions. But I've noticed the last 2 weeks that a lot of those have disappeared as well. That we're not getting as many cancellations. We're not getting as much concern around that, which is really interesting. So I don't know, man. I don't know how all this stuff works. I'm just as confused as everybody else on this planet on what's happening with all this. But yeah, you're right. I think we're seeing that narrative shift. We might see, for our own industry, tying back to short-term rentals, we might see the narrative shift back to urban rentals and travel again, because now COVID has opened up. So we might see a surge in those markets, where we're going to see a lot of these VC-backed companies get back into that. But I don't know. I'm still bullish on these like secondary markets outside of major areas, 2 to 4 hour drives, and for free wild, that's where I want to spend my time, and yeah.
I think for me, the takeaway is just it's one of many confirmations that the industry is growing and maturing, and short-term rentals is a good place to be. And again, like, I think that we should just all focus on what we're doing, and, just day by day, just like improving our business, growing our business, not get too distracted with everything that's going on, and not get too worried about like effect that's going to have on the market. Because in the long term, we're in the right industry, in my opinion. So if you have a longer term vision, then you're good.
That's the thing, man. Right? It's like, it's two things. It's one is build something that's true to you, right? Like for so many years, I got into different businesses and shifted the focus of what I was doing in short-term rentals because of what other people are doing, right? And now with Free Wild, I recognize, I'm like, oh, I'm building something that's unique to us. Like it's something that I want to travel to. I want to spend time there. I want more of this. So I'm building it that's unique to me. So no one can compete with that. If you try to build something that to compete with like Sonder or Placemakr, it's a challenge on competing in the same markets with the same product with different pricing and maybe different design, right? It's like, what can you do at a certain point that really shifts you and makes you different? If you're just trying to compete with everybody else, you got to create something that's unique to you. And then also it's like, these markets don't concern me. What's happening doesn't concern me, because we're focused on 25, 50 years from now, right? Of having a Marriott brand within the short-term rental space and unique places, right? So yeah, dude, let's talk about. Powerful time in our industry. For everyone who's listening, who's like ready to get a business off the ground, or you're scaling your business, go all in if you believe it. I mean, dude, I don't know about you, man, but I've never been so focused. I've never been so busy. I've never been so full in our businesses. Like, overnight success has grown like crazy, which is amazing. And then Free Wild is just like, we can't stop the investors from coming to us, man. It's just like every other day we're getting people interested in what we're doing and, want to fund what we're doing, but we're like, shit, we gotta build a team there. So that's what we're focused on, that as well. But yeah, dude, it's, I love where we're at right now in the industry. It's a lot of fun.
Absolutely. All right, man. Well, let's wrap this up. Any final thoughts before we disconnect?
Nah, that was it. That was it.
Sounds good.
I'm gonna go hang out in my hammock for 20 minutes and then jump back on for our marketing meeting.
All right. Well, let's do it. Thanks, Eric. And thanks everybody who is listening. Have a great weekend. Of course, Monday we'll be back with an episode of the host show, where we're going to be talking about the top markets to invest in short-term rentals. So that's going to be a really interesting episode as well. So thank you for listening, and we'll see you next time.
See you guys.